I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District. Tonight, I invited in a Boy Scout, Joel DeCamp, who has earned his Eagle Scout project by doing a project at Royal High School, in which I understood he had to learn to weld and teach others how to do that. Joel, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yeah, well, if you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't know if you can see. All right, ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And
to the republic
which stands
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I did promise Joel that he didn't have to stay for the whole meeting. So Joel, thank you for your time tonight. Have a good night.
Thank you so much. All right, bye.
As a teacher, I call it attendance, but Gina, will you take a roll?
Director Abela,
Here.
Director Freeman,
Here.
Director Gray,
Here.
Vice Chair O'Brien,
Here.
Chair Dennert.
Here. Are there any items for agenda review or any feedback on that?
Staff has no changes.
This brings us to public comments. This is for public comments not on the agenda. So nothing that's listed below, like under continued business or new business. But if you wish to speak, you just can unmute yourself. And then if you choose to identify yourself, you may, and then it's your time. I believe I saw Jana, your hand up.
Thank you, Brian. Hi, I'm Janet Orkney and I live in Oak Park. And it's a pleasure to be here. And gosh, with your new lineup, and welcome, Josh. And it's sad not to see Mark here and so on. But I just wanted to talk about park possibilities. And I am really getting that in the forefront of walking through Oak Canyon Park, which of course in Oak Park has the duck pond, it has a community center, it has a splash park, it has conventional play equipment, it has a dog park, it has something for everybody. But what really caught my attention was the Medea Creek corridor, and where it's more natural and wild. And I am just thinking that maybe we're not taking full advantage of that. And maybe you have parks in Simi that are the same way, that this wildness is increasingly an attraction, you know, as we get more civilized, I guess. And it would be nice to really vision about this, to have a workshop. I haven't mentioned this to the Oak Park Committee. That really is my next step, of course. But to vision about the possibilities of creating more attractions in Oak Canyon Park so that the waterway is more accessible, maybe more open to viewing in some places, to see aquatic animals and possibly birds. I know that yesterday, going to the duck pond, it was full of migrating birds. Now, a lot of the times I go there and there's not many people there, but it was very crowded yesterday morning. Mallards and I see Manju here. He knows the other species that were at the park, but it's maybe time to really look at it and do a long-term plan of what we can do, and really to see if we can keep invasive species out. Because when I walked the park yesterday with Manju, he was pointing out, oh, I'm stealing your talk, Manju, or something, but pointing out American tobacco plants coming in that are non-native. I have heard from another biologist that some acacia, very invasive non-native acacias coming in. There's also palm trees that keep popping up, especially by the creek, that are of course highly flammable. So instead of just looking at it as something that we've got to maintain, to look at it as an attraction, and it with that relationship to offer maybe classes. I mean, we usually just offer more activity classes, but how about some classes on bird watching? How about some on environmental relationships? How about even some volunteer classes of, all right, come on in and we'll show you how to remove, or we'll do something park sponsored to remove the crawfish. So I wanted to share that, God bless you, share that with you all, because maybe we can, as a whole park district, look at, are there parts of the parks that we're not making use of? And with that, I will wish you happy holidays and bye.
Jana, thank you. I like that you said the word possibilities. Not at this point, but in the future, the Audubon Society does a bird identification day. Bring that up at the committee meeting if that's something the community is interested in. Manju, I think I saw your hand up. You're on mute.
Unmute. Okay, there you go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, I wanted to thank the Park District. I know times like this, it's extremely difficult to manage a park or any natural resources with the funding constraints, COVID, so many other things. So my congratulations to all of you. I stand behind all of you. I'm a citizen of Oak Park. I have a son who is autistic. This park meant a lot to me. It saved my life because I walk with him almost every other day. It has healed our souls. So this is an important park for me. Now, having said that, there is so much we can do for this park. Not many people know this. Nationally, Oak Park, Duck Pond, that area has been recognized as a migratory bird habitat. Nationally, not many people know that. It's on a map. The wonderful thing about it is that wherever municipalities have improved their parks for bird and wildlife, they have also made a lot of revenues locally. Irvine is a very standing example of that. If I may offer my help, please, I'm a local biologist. I've been here for 20 years. I can help you in many ways. If you want me to look at funding, I can help you with funding. If you want me to give guidance in the field, I can give you guidance. I know Dan very well. I've spoken with him before. So I'm available. What really concerned me the other day when I was walking was, and I pointed it to Jana, they were cutting down trees that was live. And I don't blame them. It's hard for them to realize which trees are alive and which trees are burnt. Now, when willows are burnt completely, they are not a fire hazard because the water gets into their system and regenerates the trees. So they turn green. They are not a hazard. Oak trees are a different issue, but not the willows, because they are riparian plants growing from water. So some guidance has to be given to them as to what is a live plant, what is a dead plant. That's all. And again, I offer my help. If there's anything I can do for you or the Park Service or the park, please let me know. This is a jewel and an OSS we have, and we can turn this into a wonderful habitat. Thank you, sir.
Dan, the next Oak Park Advisory Committee meeting is in January, but I don't remember the date. Is it the 14th or the 7th?
Yes, 14th.
Manju, the reason I mention it is you're welcome to attend that meeting, and maybe if you speak to an advisory board member before, then it could be added to the agenda so you could discuss it in more detail.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate that.
You can unmute yourself or just raise your hand if there's anybody else with public comments not on the agenda. Carolyn, do you have anything?
I'm here to support Jana and Manju's concerns about the trees being removed from the community center park, and I would like to get more input from the biological standpoint, the environmental standpoint, rather than just having people going in and just clearing it as if it's all brush. I have not been personally aware until now about the situation, and I'm concerned about it. And I agree with Jana. I agree with Manju. So I would like to bring it, I'm bringing it to your concern over there to know that we are willing to do whatever we can to help make the cleanup be as environmentally friendly and positive as we can, because we all adore this park. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Anybody else with a comment on an item not on the agenda? That brings us to the approval of minutes for our last meeting on December 3rd. Are there any corrections to the minutes, or is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make the motion, Brian.
There's one thing, I have one question. I didn't see anything about Tracy's announcement of her retirement in the meetings. Did I miss that? It's kind of a big deal.
It's at the very end after Dan's comments.
Okay, because
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Right after Dan's comments, because he introduced her.
Okay, yeah, okay, all right. So I looked and I saw a mention of the needing a new recreation director, but that was it. Okay. Get more carefully next time.
So we have a motion to approve.
I made the motion.
Elaine seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Gina, I'm seeing it as a 5-0 vote to approve the minutes with no one abstaining or voting no.
Got it.
That brings us to the consent agenda. Are there any, is there any feedback or comments on the consent agenda?
I have a question.
Elaine?
On page 6, item number 96006. Are those picnic tables, Wayne, you'd probably answer this. Are they picnic tables for any specific park, or are they for everywhere?
Wayne, you need to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Dan. No, we bought 25 new picnic tables to start replacing them throughout the entire district. Anyone that was completely bad, we've replaced it at this point in time. We're going to order a few more because we're a little bit short for Rancho Santa Susana, but we're trying to replace it while we're during this COVID time.
Thank you.
Wayne, are those the new metal that are like rubber coated?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda or any more comments on it? Josh has a motion to approve it or a comment?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
And Ed seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Mine muted? No, I'm
Kate?
nothing.
Kate, I didn't catch your vote. I apologize.
I voted yes.
That's a 5-0 vote. All in.
Can you guys hear
all in
me?
favor.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
That brings us to presentations, scheduled items, and public hearings.
Honorable Chair and members of the board, I'm pleased to present this evening the November 2020 Employee of the Month, and Kelly Negretti is here with us this evening. Kelly is a recreation coordinator at the Rancho Santa Susana Community Center. She's worked for the district for 13 years, and this is her second Employee of the Month award. The person who nominated Kelly stated the following: a can-do attitude, overachiever, team player, great sense of humor, and a willingness to strive beyond her duties are just a few ways to describe Kelly. Park patrons and coworkers comment on their appreciation for Kelly's calm demeanor, professionalism, and knowledge of programs. Even through the fluidity of the pandemic, she has stayed enthusiastic and on task. She has worked tirelessly to improve operations and efficiency and always looking forward to the next step. This forward thinking has led to the smooth transition of relocating 3 of the RSRPD preschool programs to the Rancho Santa Susana Community Center. In addition, Kelly manages social media channels and assists with new virtual and in-person classes and helps with special events. For all these reasons and many more, Kelly is deserving of the Employee of the Month recognition. So Kelly, I'm sorry I can't give you your plaque here tonight in person, but I'll get that to you, and I hope you enjoy your day off celebrating your award.
Are there any comments from board members?
I do, Brian.
Ed, go ahead.
Right. I just want to say, I try not to play favorites on the board, but I'm human. So I have, every once in a while, I do have a fave, and you're one of them, Kelly. I think you're great for the Park District. Haven't been able to visit you guys over there because of COVID as much when I go over there to run this year, but it was fun to go over there and talk to you yesterday. Keep up the good work. You're awesome. You're a rising star in the district, and congratulations.
Any other comments from board members?
I would just like to congratulate her. I have the opportunity a few times to reserve the facilities through her, and she's very thorough and does a great job and follow up and make sure everything is done the way it's supposed to be done. Congratulations, Kelly.
Thank you.
Any other comments? For me, Kelly, I want to congratulate you on your communication skills, including that in the world we live in, to communicate with the public, that's going to involve electronics and it's going to involve social media, and Kelly is a star at that. She quickly responds and brings in her own perspective, which provides confidence to the public in our programs and our activities. And I appreciate that. And she's very serious about her position, and she's a professional. So all the things that people should aspire to. So congratulations. Kelly, I see that you're on the Zoom right now. Do you have any comments?
I'd just like to say thank you. I do appreciate the person that did nominate me. I certainly am very grateful for everyone that I have been able to work with and I currently work with. I have a wonderful support team with everybody on site and beyond that. I certainly enjoy everybody I work with, but also all the components of the district, including, the community and everybody that makes up for it. So I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Kelly, one of the specific example of it was somebody asked a question and I said, I think Kelly probably knows. And I meant that you would check the next day or the day after. You would see it later and be able to get feedback. Late at night, that person got the exact answer that they wanted immediately with all the information. So it's that type of feedback that I really appreciate. That brings us to, is there any other presentations for Employee of the Month? You are on mute.
Tracy, you need to get off mute.
Sorry. Our part-time Employee of the Month was unable to make it this evening, but I'll be sure to get her plaque.
If you, when you talk to her, let her know I'm proud of her. I had the honor of teaching her at Royal High School.
Oh.
And her work was so good. Complete coincidence. I keep it in a back closet to give examples of amazing work because it went above and beyond. So I'm not surprised that she's taken that attitude.
I'll be sure to pass that on. That's very nice.
I saved it and I was so excited to wave it and show that I still had it, but it's been years and that's how good it is. So I'm not surprised at all.
I'll let her know.
That brings us to continued business. Item A, status of the district's response to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, verbal report.
Thank you, Chair and board members. Since the last time we met, we've had a couple of complaints. One was regarding softball activity at Rancho Madera. As the board knows, games are not allowed. So we had to entertain the complaint and sent the Rangers up there to address that. Secondly, more significantly, we permitted a football camp at Rancho Santa Susana. And when we permit those, we condition those to ensure that they follow all of the COVID guidelines. We had example of through photos of them not doing that. So I've dealt with that complaint and those who were concerned about it. And we will also be more closely monitoring any high school level camps that are to be permitted in the district. So also, since we last met, we are now under a regional stay-at-home order. The last time we met, we had indicated that may be coming. It has in fact come. Like I had mentioned previously, it is a little bit different or modified from the previous stay-at-home order that we were under in April and May. At this point, all of our outdoor spaces are open, including playgrounds. Last time they were closed. All of our indoor facilities are generally closed, except for the after-school club or the PAL program. The aquatics and the pool is still open. Preschool is still open and golf is still open. Those are still allowed under the new order. Staff is working various schedules depending on their essential activity that we need to do as a park district, and some are telecommuting from time to time in compliance with the stay-at-home order. We currently, other than those areas I mentioned, have no programming, indoor or outdoor, occurring. We will start those as soon as we can. And then lastly, the state on December 14th issued new guidance for adult and youth sports. Chair Dennard, I think you had been asking what's the plan for this moving forward, and we got a plan. What it allows for now is adult and youth sports can do training and conditioning where you can socially distance, so that is not a change. They did allow adult sports to move into that area where you can do training and conditioning and activities of the sport where you could socially distance. Along with that, though, they introduced a chart which lets us know when various sports can actually begin to play games. So depending on the nature of the sport and the contact level of the sport, certain sports are allowed to reopen for games in the purple tier, some in the red tier, and some in the orange and yellow tier. So we're not there yet on the games because obviously we're not in any of those tiers. We're at the regional stay-at-home order, but there is a plan tied to the tiers on when your sport can open for games and activity. With that, that is my report.
Board members, are there any questions or comments on his report?
I do. When we get complaints, I mean, what do? We respond and just do something different, or you said we had a couple of complaints.
Yeah, like I got a report. We can't be anywhere at all times. So sometimes the community calls in with concerns, and they informed us that there were adult softball games occurring at Rancho Madera. So we send folks out to that location, either in the moment or as a follow-up. So this happened to be on a weekend. So we send folks the next weekend and we educate folks and let them know, hey, sorry about it, but we're not allowed to do this. And we received a complaint about it. With the football camp, I contacted the person that was responsible for the camp, expressed our concern with how the camp was conducted, and then also put in some protocols in that we had a complaint for these this is the first large camp we've had, to ensure that they are following protocols. That may include a monitor, it may include a ranger going out, and that would be a part of their fee, but it depends on the nature of the camp. So that's how we respond to the complaints. So generally, we're relying on people to follow the COVID guidelines and regulations as entities and organizations. Again, we don't set the rules. We try to help enforce them. So generally, we're relying on folks to do that and do the right thing, which most are. We get very few complaints. But in those areas where we do get complaints, it's kind of reactive enforcement. We'll go out and find the folks and let them educate them.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Dan had a suggestion, not tonight, that we would discuss it in detail, but knowing the tier system for sports being allowed, one of the differences is basketball can be played outdoors easier than indoors. Now, we could argue about if that makes sense, but that's not up for us to determine. The reason I mention it is maybe in a future meeting, we could prepare for that and to think, do we need to provide temporary basketball courts? Because I know some places don't have a place to practice because they're not allowed to practice indoors. And maybe it's not ideal. Maybe it's not a full basketball court. Maybe it's a parking lot, but maybe we need to invest in a few extra rims for a short period of time, or volleyball nets. I know we're not discussing that in detail, but just a suggestion maybe we'll think about in the future. Could I get an update on our childcare programs, how that's going?
I'd ask Danielle or Richard to respond, or Tracy to address that question. Let's start with Tracy and then we'll go to Danielle.
So our childcare has been holding steady. We unfortunately did have some positive cases. We are affected when there are cases that happen in the classrooms. So we were notified of a couple of our students that were in classrooms that were positive COVID. That meant they could not come to our program. The school's been very good about communicating that with us, but then we do have parents now who have, childcare issues. So we are trying to work out a protocol where if they can't go to school for 2 weeks, if we're able to get them negative tested, then maybe we can find them a spot in one of our locations. But we have cohort restrictions, and of course we have mandates where we can't mix groups, and so we're working through some of that. We did have a COVID positive case with one of our staff, so we did have to notify and shut down one of our sites. Again, we are trying to work around all the mandatory, restricted times by allowing people to come back as soon as they're tested negative. So at this point, we are waiting to see if we can open that site back up on Monday. Starting tomorrow, we are on a holiday schedule, so class is not meeting because of winter break. We are definitely on top of communicating with the school, following their guidelines, contact tracing, and shutting our sites down as soon as we know that we have any kind of a concern. Obviously, we are notifying the parents, trying to relocate the students if possible. And if it goes on for a period of time, we've had some parents who are concerned about the financial end of it and potentially missing some time and requesting refunds. So every day brings kind of something new. I think right now, there is an uptick, obviously, in cases, and we're seeing some of that trickling into our program. And Richard can give you a little more specifics if you want that.
And sorry, Chair, if you could update us on enrollment numbers and then what the plan is, what schools are, how many do we have open, and do we plan to open more as we get into the new year?
Richard, can you provide us with that information?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we currently have 93 children enrolled across 5 sites. As for plans for the future, obviously there's a couple of major prerequisites that are required in order for us to open up a new site. And the biggest is parent need. One of the things that we've done in order to identify a parent need throughout the community is an interest list at each and every site. Each site would obviously carry a potential minimum in order to open and be viable through the rest of the school year. None of the sites outside of our current sites have met that minimum. Therefore, while it would be great to open up and continue our expansion or our re-expansion, this simply not meeting the minimums at this time, and we do feel like we're meeting the need of the community. Our sites that are open are near capacity, though they do have a few more spots at each location. It's a difficult game of making sure that we can keep children socially distanced and making sure that we're maximizing each site's square footage. So doing the best that we can, and we're in the sweet spot right now as far as the sites that are open.
Richard, when we create that interest list, how do we communicate that to families? Like, does it go to every family at that school or just families that in the past have been involved?
So it's actually, it at the beginning of the school year was communicated to anybody that was prior enrolled in our program. Now it's housed on our website. When you search for information on the program, it's there. It's part of our registration system where people, when they search for certain programs, so if you say we're interested in potentially getting into the Crestview Club, when you type in Crestview on our registration website, that interest list automatically populates. In fact, it's the first thing that comes up. And then obviously it's a tool that our staff uses. So whenever we get interest from parents either at our existing sites or through our main line at the district office, that's the first spot that we want parents to visit.
Richard, do you see value in asking the school to include it like in their newsletters, or do you feel like the way you do it reaches most of the families or the families?
I feel like, especially during COVID, it's a very need-based operation, and parents that need it are going to find us. We love a good opportunity to work with the school district any chance that we have. I don't know that it would be potentially fruitful in this particular instance. The other thing to remember too is in certain cases, our minimums would require us to actually get extra room on campus, room in which is not currently available after talking to some of the schools. So in certain cases, it's going to be very difficult, not just making sure that we've got a need, but that we can also house the program. But
Dan,
that's not a situation. I'm
Did
sorry,
that,
go ahead.
I said, Dan, I had jumped in there. Did that answer your questions?
Yeah.
Then any of our staff could answer this. If a child care worker is asked to go get tested, or if they test positive and they're supposed to quarantine, do they get paid, or is that just a pay cut basically? Like if they say you got to take 5 days off, it's not their choice
I'll
to.
have Teresa answer that question.
Yes, we are paying for employees the day they test and during that quarantine period until they either one, get a negative result and then they can return, or if it, hopefully it's not the case, but if they are positive, then they would get paid during that quarantine until they recover as well.
And then my next question is probably for Wayne. Wayne, mostly this applies to our maintenance crews. If they're going to a job site together, I know we have limited vehicles. Are they expected to ride together, or do they have the option to ride separately? Maybe we don't have that ability because of our equipment.
About
You know, a
50,
lot of them are probably comfortable riding together because they're around each other all day long anyways.
yeah, 50% of our staff have to ride together because we don't have enough vehicles to put one per person. Supervisors and crew leaders all have their own vehicles. But 50%.
Do they have the option to drive themselves, or is there any insurance stopping them?
No, while they're working, we ask them to only use district vehicles. No personal vehicles. And that's not an insurance thing, it's just a safety thing.
Has any staff given us feedback on their feelings on that? Like, are they fine and good with that, or do they feel like they're being pressured to ride together?
I've never received a complaint yet. And I don't know if Teresa has either, but they seem to be working well together, and they know that they're not going to infect each other out there. You know, if somebody knows that he's questionable, they're not going to put somebody else in jeopardy. They have that kind of decency and respect for their other employees.
I like to hear
Haven't
that.
received complaints on that, and we do require them to wear masks while they are driving together.
That's it for me. Is there any other questions or comments from board members? That brings us to item B, new district logo and community outreach and promotion plan logo applications.
Thank you, Chair. Danielle June is going to open this item, and then we're going to turn it over to our consultant, Diane McKay, to also provide part of the presentation. Go ahead, Danielle.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Honorable Chair and members of the board. At the November 19th board meeting, district staff presented the community outreach and promotion plan and guide, and along with that, a new look for the district's primary logo. Through discussion of the primary logo design and its applicable uses, staff was directed to present additional examples of the logo in use. And so we're here tonight with marketing consultant Diane McKay to present those varieties. Staff has worked diligently with Diane and her team and is confident that the comprehensive plan and guide will be most effective with the incorporation of this new logo. It'll provide kind of a renewed and consistent look, touch, and feel with the district. So at this time, I'd like to welcome Diane, who is going to present the primary logo and its approved uses, along with some samples of the logo in multiple media forms.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board, and public that are here, and staff. Thanks for having me back. It's a pleasure. I have my virtual background up because I've been on Zoom all day, and I can't stand to see my real background anymore today. So, so anyway, we brought back some samples of the logo for you to see this evening, both, you know, how they might be used kind of separated as you had asked, and also in stationary and look, and there's the screen share. So here, the first is the full logo, and the only thing I could ask is, you know, I put my hand over the our description underneath it because that makes it look busier. But the Rancho Simi logo is there, the acceptable variation of without the trees, and then of course the trees only, which are very recognizable to the Rancho Simi Park District. And then again, just the acceptable variation of Rancho Simi, which I think over time, when it's used on a lot of materials and people are used to seeing it, will be identified very easily with Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District. Next slide. Danielle, can you change it to the next slide?
Yeah, sorry, Diane, it's not advancing. Work during our trial run, I promise. Give me 1 second.
The other thing you can do is you can play with, you can take those descriptions off. There we go.
We got it.
This is one example of Rancho Simi letterhead. this, has kind of a heavier bottom on it and blue. Probably one that I would recommend for more formal use, simply because of the bleed of the bottom. It's not easily self-printed. Next slide, please. Just another example. This is the full logo in its use on letterhead. I know there was concern about, the trees next to the new Rancho Simi Recreation and Park logo and I kind of like it. I like it in this use. Everyone has their own particular taste, but that's what it would look like if all of the parts and pieces were together on letterhead. Next slide, please. And then again, a more simpler version where the trees are down below, still stamping the recognizable kind of seal of the Recreation and Park District, and then the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District new logo up in the corner. Next slide. And then again, another variation where the more recognizable trees are at the top and the Rancho Simi is at the bottom. And there's lots of variations, but all of these are clean, nice looks that I think update the logo the way we had been asked. Next slide, moving to how it might look on a advertisement or a flyer. Again, this is the full logo. And then next slide would be the simplified version. And again, we put the trees down, in another place, still keeping the recognizable trees in the snow and Simi. Next slide, please. These are examples of business cards. Again, with the one with the full use of the trees and the full logo. And then separating them a bit with just the trees on the back. And then another look. Next, there we go. This is kind of what would look like on social media. Again, this is stock. We would never use stock on your materials. You have beautiful photography of yours, of Simi Valley and your trails and your parks and all of the great facilities. But this is kind of what the logos would look like. So picture your own beautiful photographs with, this is just how the logos would look. We did throw in the black and white version in there because that's often used in newsprint when you're not paying for a color logo. And so we did want you to see how it translated in black and white. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions and entertain any discussion or thoughts on the logos.
Do any
Chair
board
Danner?
I would go back to the first logo, probably the first slide is probably the easiest for discussion.
Chair Denner?
Yes.
I do have a couple comments and questions to begin.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I have to say, and I'm not here to put blame, and I don't know whether this would be directed to Dan or Danielle or Diane, but I feel gypped here, and I'm not here about the blame thing, but we had a meeting a month ago, and the idea was that we would get, based on the discussion, some other examples of possible logos that we could use. There were a majority of board members, and I checked my notes on this. I spoke with Dan today. I haven't had time to listen back to the audio, but there were a majority of board members that wanted the, if you want to call those trees, kept as part of the logo. There were also a majority of board members that thought the logo was kind of busy. And the idea is that we would be presented with some alternatives today. They didn't have to be like, the whole idea was not huge changes in the logo, but at least some variation on the logo. And all we've been done is presented with the same logo, except in convoluted form where 4 different versions of it can be used. And that's not to say that we wouldn't go with this or one of these variations, but as a board member, when I make a request, and at the time I was the chair, when I make a request and the board then agrees to have the matter put over for a month, I expect to at least get something along the lines of what I requested. Now, we got part of it. We did want examples of how it would look in the various forms of media and display, and we did get that. So I do commend everyone involved on that. But we didn't get any other variations of the logo, and that's what I requested. So my suggestion would be that we wait another month to make a decision, and we get what we requested. I know personally for me, I will not be able to vote on this tonight. The most I'll be able to do is abstain, because as a board member, I feel gypped. I didn't get what was requested. I will say as a general comment, and if we get into this more specifically, I'll get into it more specifically, having, again, shown this logo to more individuals, I understand that the, whatever you want to call it, the stick figure thing that looks like trees has been part of our logo for about 50 years. But one of the comments that I can tell you that you get is the whatever that stick figure of trees is doesn't tell you that it's the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District. The fact that it says Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District is what tells you that what you're looking at there is perhaps trees. And you know, the whole idea is we're trying to update and refresh, and to be so obsessed with a part of a logo that, you know, utilize technology that's like half a century old isn't meeting the purpose. But I can go into more detail on that if we're going to discuss that. But what I really want to emphasize is before we make any decision at all, I at least want to see something along the lines of what was requested, or I feel like I'm being gypped here.
I don't know if you want me to, I can respond at least on the feeling gypped part, is that in our scope of work, a new logo was not in it. We brought in this new Rancho Simi look because we thought it worked with the branding that we had been asked to provide, with a new look and feel with branding. And so I don't think that you got gypped out of anything. This was something that we put in that we were not was not in the scope of work, and we weren't paid to do. And we would be happy to do logo exploration, but that it does entail a different scope of work. And
well,
so
Diane, I'm not necessarily saying that you're the one who gypped me. I'm not trying to put blame here. What I'm indicating is at the board meeting a month ago, I specifically wanted to see, along the lines of what we discussed, a couple other variations of the logo different than what we had already seen. Not the fact that we can use 4 different logos, which is completely opposite of what I would want. I don't think we should be using 4 different variations with the main logo being the really busy one. That's my personal opinion, but I don't want to get into whether I'd vote yes or no now. I just, and again, maybe it's something our district manager needs to direct you to do or arrange with you to do, but I didn't get back what I expected to get back tonight. So I certainly can't approve this, but I don't even know that I can vote on it, because as a board member, I made a request. The board agreed to go forward with that request, and I haven't gotten what I expected. So I don't even, maybe you're not even the one to address it, Diane. Again, I'm not trying to play the blame game here. I, as a board member, am just trying to get what I requested.
Are there other questions or comments from board members? Or Dan, is there something specific you want to respond to there?
Apologize, or I'm sorry, did you say Diane or Dan?
Dan.
Oh, yeah. So I apologize for the miscommunication. My read of the meeting was that generally the board liked the logo, but we were to bring back variations of the logo with the tree and without, and how it would be used. To the extent that the board wants to do a new logo with variations, I can certainly work with Diane to get a scope of work and to explore a new logo. I would note that it will go into the rest of our plan and the design of that if we're going to change the look. So I didn't hear in our last meeting, I didn't hear a whole lot of discussion about variations. I thought we were talking about variations with the tree and without. So if we want variations to the logo, I'd ask the board for a little direction on what type of variation we want. I
I did make that request multiple times when that was the reason that we were putting it over. And if you listen back to the audio, I think it'll verify that. And I'm not a logo designer. The whole idea was to come up with a logo that's less busy. And then maybe I remember the discussion specifically, maybe there was an alternate way of using the trees and coming up with a logo that was less busy. But whenever I have this way of speaking and presentation that whenever I really want something, I make sure I make at least 3 mentions of it. And I can almost guarantee you that if you listen back to the audio of the meeting, you'll find that I mentioned that at least 3 times. So the point is we already agreed to do that at the meeting a month ago. And, again, it was the request of the board, specifically my request, and then in general, the board as a whole. And I feel we should at least get something along the lines of what was requested. I don't think we need to renew something that was already requested just because it didn't happen. That's not fair to me as a board member.
If it's the pleasure of the board, we can do a new logo.
Chair Dennard?
Honestly,
okay?
Creations.
I apologize, Kate. I think I saw Elaine speak first. Elaine Freeman?
Okay. I have a little different view of what happened. I thought we were just going to modify what we saw a month ago. The discussion with the tree and whether it was blue and green or just blue or all green. So just on what I have here, my own personal feeling on the one with the blue stripe along the bottom, I don't like that at all. It looks bottom heavy to me. I like it better with the 2 lines and the address coming in along on the left side. I think it's cleaner. And when the trees on the second page, the logo with the tree is part of the top, with the trees being the larger size, I think it balances. With the trees being small, I don't think it did. But personally, I like the one you have on the screen now. And if you bring back more, but I just don't care for that blue heavy line across the bottom of the stationery.
This was actually a staff favorite as well.
I was to say, I don't particularly love the one with the blue line across the bottom either. And as a matter of practicality, with a bleed off the bottom, as I said, it doesn't work well to print a print as needed.
Okay.
Director Kate O'Brien?
Yes. I would tend to concur. I like this one that's displayed. I feel strongly about keeping the trees because we've had that forever. And if we want to, have a brand recognition ID thing, we should probably keep the trees. I don't like the blue across the bottom either because it's too heavy and distracting. In terms of busyness, I think that's part of it. You said something about showing us in black and white, and I did not see either in my packet or in the slides a black and white example of this logo. Do you have one handy that you could show us?
If you go to the last slide, the social media, there's just this one in the center where you can see it in black and white.
Oh, yeah, right in the middle of the photo. I see. Okay, all right. Well, the trees wouldn't show up in that at all. Well,
no, that's the simplified version, just in a black and white, how it would appear, again, if you were going to embroider it on shirts or hats or that kind of thing.
Yeah, okay.
Director Gray?
It is in black and white, right. Okay.
Kate, was that it, or did you have more questions?
No, that was it. I don't remember. I didn't look. I didn't listen to the tape either. But anyway, those are my comments. So,
Josh.
Sure. So I was not on the board during that meeting. Obviously, I do remember attending, and my recollection is very similar to Elaine's. I agree with some of the comments about letterhead and all that. I do like that second one more, whether it be for a formal occasion or not. That I think that does balance well. The scope of work question, open to, but I also don't necessarily want to spend funds when I don't see an issue necessarily with this logo. I like it. I do like it whenever it's simplified as possible. I think it makes branding easier, and that whole discussion. But I don't know, and I'm open to argumentation, but I don't know if an extra month is potentially worth time that we can't reclaim, and potentially without an idea of what could pop up in a month. I don't know if that's worth it, but I do appreciate the work that has been done, and I do like it so far. That's all I have.
Diane, I apologize for putting you on the spot with a number question, but if we delayed this, one problem is as Josh mentioned, we had a rollout plan for our marketing, but besides that, when you said scope of work, could you give a rough estimate? Like if we said, please design some more logos and come back?
It's tough because typically then we don't just throw logos out. We would do some research on what Park and Recs look like so that we don't replicate someone who's nearby, so that your branding is distinct. That's what it is so far. Again, we did the new logo for the County of Ventura. And to give you an idea, that was about, granted, that's lots of departments that we had to go through and many, many people, but that was went several months to end up with the logo that the County of Ventura is now using. So it really depends. The City of Thousand Oaks, to come up with the oak tree that's on the City of Thousand Oaks logo, we literally at a city council meeting placed individual leaves to suit the council. So it can really vary, and taste is a very difficult thing to put your arms around. It's one of those things that once you get used to something, most people learn to like it. It's really hard to get 5 people to love something that's the same. It happens. We've gotten a lot of good feedback on the County of Ventura logo. We've gotten a lot of good feedback on a lot of the logos that we've done, but they do take longer than a month. It is going to push back particularly with this falling with the holidays, it will take longer than a month. We would, full logo exploration is color exploration, design, how is it going to look? So it really starts over. This was using what you had and simply suggesting that this script and the hills maybe represented Simi Valley a little bit better than the harsh lines that were currently being used with the kind of branding the full branding package that we were putting out with your new marketing.
So if we requested it, one issue is time, which could be extensive. The other one is money.
Yes.
I know you would have to research that a little bit more, but because it might inform the fellow board members' decisions or thought process. Expensive.
We're doing a lot of work with you. We would work with you the best that we can, but I'm going to throw out a number of somewhere around $10,000. That's not, that's just kind of standard with the research that needs to be done and the exploration and the back and forth that we would go back to.
Chair Denner?
Yes.
I just want to make one comment. I'm not suggesting a go from scratch overhaul of the logo. I suggested some variation on what was originally presented, of which we don't really have here. What we got is a recommendation for the original logo that was presented, and then other ways that it can be used. Again, the idea isn't that it has to be a go from scratch thing, just some minor change to it that might have encompassed all the remarks that everyone made. And Dan and Diane, anyone can listen to the meeting of a month ago. So I'm not asking for this to be put over for a long time. The reason we put it over for the month was to get that, and we didn't get that. So I'm not asking for a complete overhaul. I'm not asking for a $10,000 project. I'm asking for something along the lines of what was requested a month ago. And otherwise, it means the meeting was worthless a month ago, and everything that was done. It's more than just about the logo at this point. It's about the principle of the thing. Is the district manager running the park board, or is the park board giving direction to the district manager? We did this a month ago. I'm confident that if the audio was listened to based on my notes, this is what was expected today, and we didn't get it. So I'm not trying to turn this into a whole overhaul of the logo or start from scratch. I'm just trying to get what I requested a month ago.
Okay. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask for any public input before we take any actions, like a voting action or expressing specific opinions about the logo. Is there anybody in this meeting that a member of the public that would like to give public input or public comment on this item? Carolyn?
Yes. In hearing Ed talk, I understand his frustration. I didn't hear the meeting at all that he was describing, but I'm a little bit confused about what his expectations were as a complete outsider. So I don't know whether he should clarify a little bit more what he was expecting, but I'm very fond of the logo, the upper left-hand corner. I don't see it on my screen right now. The one that has the tree on the left and the hills and the Rancho Cini script. I mean, I think it's very, very attractive myself. So I like the letter formation that Kate and Elaine were describing. I thought that was very well done. So that's my personal opinion for what it's worth.
Is there any other member of the public that would like to give input on this item? All right, not seeing any other input. I have some questions, and I definitely will address or bring up the points that Director Abela mentions. The current logo, there's many variations that we're seeing. But Diane, who would we give credit to for designing it? Not the variations, but the primary design. If somebody asked me, Brian, who designed the logo?
I would say that we refreshed a current design, that Mustang Marketing refreshed a current design of the Rancho Cini Rec and Park District.
Then Dan might be able to answer that. Dan, who do we give credit to? I'm thinking like the anomalous trees that we don't know where they came from. Well, maybe this time we'll get it right and give credit to somebody. Danielle, I think I saw you were about to.
Talking about when the trees and logo were the trees originally designed?
No, I mean this general idea of a logo with the two mountains, the blue and green. In general, where would we credit that to?
I would credit to Mustang Marketing. They're the ones that added it in. I mean, they took our foundational logo, but they're the ones that presented us with that logo.
I think there were a variety of people who contributed to that as well, Brian. I think you're asking. So, Tracy sat down with a few staff and we were talking about the hills and representation of the valley. What would be a good representation of the recreational elements? The colors actually formed off of our current website. So the coloration was kind of pulled from that existing platform already. So I think it was definitely a combination of. We did go around with a couple draft designs and asked staff for some of their opinions and their thoughts. And this one was kind of the favorite among staff. So yes, I definitely attribute to Mustang for throwing it all together. But I think in collaboration, there was a lot of input from a lot of people who had a heart for this logo.
It was a very collaborative effort, much different than when we come in with, here's, 6 logos, narrow it down to 3, narrow it down to 2. Then, and those started black and white. Then we start the color exploration kind of after shapes and things are decided. So that's why it is a long process. And this was much different than that. This was something where we thought the script would look a little bit nicer with your branding, and we brought it in, and then in collaborative work, we came up with this final product.
And then Diana, a question for you. If you could put back up the presentation.
Once again.
So I'm seeing the logo with the tree, it says full logo, and then I'm seeing the one next to it. It says acceptable variation.
Uh-huh.
And I get that. I understand what full logo means, but which one would we actually see the most? Because you don't all, in my mind, you don't necessarily always see the full logo, like if it's on a business card or an ad. So I get what, if we say this is our full logo, but which one would we probably see the most?
I think ultimately you would see the acceptable variation, the two bottom acceptable variations, that either the trees, when it's like a thumbnail, when you're on social media and you have just the little thumbnail on the side, that the trees would lend itself well for that. And then the Rancho Simi, like I said, on a shirt or a cap or a t-shirt or an event header, that the Rancho Simi, that, I mean, the hope was, as we discussed this along the way, that eventually just the Rancho Simi with the hill in the background would be identified with the park district, and it wouldn't even require the recreation and park district language underneath it.
So in my mind, I get full logo and acceptable variation, what we're speaking of, but it's almost like acceptable variations, the real logo, and then occasionally the acceptable variations, Ed, is you would say the busier one. Like the one I'm going to see the most is the acceptable variation, which means in my mind, it's not the variation, it's the logo. And then you said
Diane could
generic.
better. Oh, I'm sorry, Brian. I think Diane could better speak to it, but I think the opportunity to have the full logo is because the trees then are included. So if we accept the acceptable variation as our primary logo, it doesn't allow for as many opportunities to use just the trees, is my understanding.
Because what does follow is there is we send over guidelines because time goes by and different work, and they take the logo and someone might stretch it out or do something with it, and so we do send over guidelines of the usage, and that's why you vote on the acceptable usage and acceptable variations, because then you'll see a lot of things that when we do the guidelines that is not acceptable, and it wouldn't be an acceptable variation, for example, to put the trees on the right side, or it wouldn't be an acceptable variation to put the trees in the middle between Rancho and Simi. And so that's why you vote on the acceptable variations, and then we provide a brand guidebook that says how they can be used.
And my next question is, you have photos that you would use in advertisements, and you complimented our photographs. If a member of the public want to donate a photo or submit a photo, do we have that capability to add that in there?
Sure.
Danielle,
Brian, we're actually keeping a portfolio. Yeah, we actually have a portfolio of photos, and we're actually working in recreation to move them all to a shared OneDrive, so that all staff would have access to all of the photos. So when they're doing social media or they're doing a flyer, that they would be able to pull from those.
And I'm not saying it needs to be done immediately, but I have the suggestion of asking the public to submit to it. We have some wonderful photographers, and just being able to see their photos used, they might be happy with that.
Yeah, it's great. As long, again, I wouldn't be your consultant if I didn't caution you, obviously, to get sign off if there's children and people in them that they assign the rights to you to use them.
I also appreciate that the mountains are not generic, that we discussed it, and that it's the mountains. We're not going to put a happy face on it, but it's specific mountains in Simi Valley. Which brings me to what Director Abla brought up of the scope and the debate over what we're expecting. So I echo some of his remarks of what I was thinking is we'd see variations or logos, but I wasn't very clear in my direction. I might not have said I want to see completely different logos, but I wanted to see variations for sure. And the definition of a variation could be debatable if it's the same idea remixed a little bit versus a completely fresh start. So if we went through those minutes and discussed that, I was definitely expecting like maybe we'd see it mixed up, because as you mentioned on the slide with the bottom blue, a park district's primary color is green. It's a park district, but that doesn't mean there's no way to mix in other colors like blue. So like I see it a little bit, and that I see the recommendation is approve of a logo and letterhead, and I'm ready to do that. But I want to hear from the other board members specifically on what Ed brought up. Do you feel like we should include the possibility of taking the time and energy, the time and money on exploring possible other logos? Or are we good with this? So there's two, I see in the recommendation two things. One is the slide we're currently looking at, approving it as is. And then the second thing that we're doing is looking over the letterhead.
Okay.
So if any board members have comments on that, I'm interested in what your opinion was on specifically what Director Abela brought up.
I have a question. Somebody brought up, I forget who it was, I guess it was Brian, having the public look at this and react to it. Diane, did you do like focus groups with public or anything?
No, we did not. So again, since this was just something that we did to add on to the refresh that we were doing, this was not a full brand and logo study. That takes a lot of time. And I will say, I use the San Luis Obispo's, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo's new logo, which is but my two sons both went there and they're both really disappointed in it, because what you end up with a full public vote is usually the one that is the most bland, because it's the least objectionable. And so you don't end up with anything that's very, recognizable. And so, and I think that I point to Cal Poly, I would have you look at their old logo and their new logo as a university. And I don't think they did themselves any favors by having a public vote on it.
Okay. All right. That's okay.
Hey, was that it?
That was it. That was it. I was just.
Elaine?
I'm comfortable actually with what we have here, provided the letterhead doesn't have that blue band along the bottom. I mean, I don't like that at all, but I think it looks good. It's simple, it's easy to read. It represents the hills, the valleys, and trees, and that's what we're all about. So I guess I don't have any issue with wanting variation.
Anybody have a comment or thoughts on what Ed brought up?
No, I mean, even if there was a miscommunication, I think we have several really good options here. So,
I want to look at the letterhead if we could. I don't know if the slides are numbered, but the first letterhead I'm holding up to my screen. Yeah, that one. This is my second preference because, as Ed mentioned before, that busyness. I like the continuity and change of the idea that we're keeping some of the tradition, but moving forward with the new brand. And I think the trees do that. And it's also on the marquees or the big monuments in front of most of our parks. So it keeps that and doesn't make that dated. Like if we eliminated the trees altogether, then the signs have some old logo on them. But my preference for the letterhead is the next one, I think. It's that one. And the reason for that is, as Ed mentioned before, the busyness. I feel like this looks just smoother. So, I mean, it brings up who we are. We're a park district, there's trees, but it's not all together. So I know that the staff recommendation, which logo variation to use on the letterhead, this is my preference. Is there any other comments on the letterhead?
Do you think that tree down in the lower right looks like it's just placed there, sort of floating around? I mean, it's, you know what I'm saying?
Elaine, is that meaning your preference was the slide right before?
You don't usually have something next to the signature, or a person's signature would be.
Yeah.
The tree down in that corner looks like it's misplaced or something to me.
Ed, I understand your viewpoint on or I believe I do, on the larger issue at hand, but specifically on letterhead, do you have any input?
Brian, I'm not giving any more input tonight. I'll be abstaining, and at the appropriate time, I'll give my reasons for why. I think I've already stated them.
And then, Dan, you can give me direction on this. We have a recommendation. If I say, is there a motion to accept the recommendation it would be with the logos on the front page. And then separately than that, we would also have to give you feedback specifically on which letterhead. Is that true?
Yes.
And then that means before I make that motion, Josh or Kate, can you give me feedback on the letterhead? So my personal preference was the letterhead where the tree and the logo were separate to keep down the busyness. And then my second favorite was when they were together. My least favorite was the blue stripe, but I think we've obviously addressed that.
With me, it's kind of a close race between number 2 with the tree in the top right next to the logo and with the tree at the bottom. I think I have a slight preference for the tree at the top, but I could certainly live with the one with the tree at the bottom. So.
My preference would be tree at the top. Yeah.
Would you like to motion and see where it goes, Mark? I mean,
Elaine, what was that?
Would you like a motion and see how it falls out?
I would. I'm just going to acknowledge that Director Josh Gray came dressed appropriately for this meeting with a shirt that has blue and green with stripes. Is there a motion to on any of the recommendations or the recommendation?
I will make the motion to accept the alternatives and using the letterhead that's on the screen.
Dan, would you, Elaine, I'm hearing your motion, but Dan, would you like that to be 2 separate motions for any reason?
I don't think so. If we have approval of the thing and then, but they're both built together, whatever your preference is.
Okay.
Unless people are going to vote on 2 different ways. I guess let's do it separately just to see if we're supportive of the logo variations generally, and then the letterhead. So it probably should be 2 because there could be some differences between the 2. So I would take the logo first and then the letterhead second.
So we can have a second to that motion or withdraw the motion.
I'll second.
So that means there's a recommendation. And Elaine, your motion is to accept the staff recommendation for the logo.
Correct.
And the letterhead was what?
Number 2.
So Chair, you could, with that particular motion, you could get a vote for no on this logo that's on the screen because someone's voting against the letterhead, even though they support the logo on the screen.
Okay.
For example, I'm fine with the logo on the screen. I have a different opinion on the letterhead.
Correct. So 2 motions is probably better.
So my motion is on the logo on the screen.
So we have a motion for the logo on the screen. Do we have a second to that? So I see Kate with a second. So it's the motion is the logo on the screen to accept the staff recommendation, with Lane with the motion and Kate with the second.
All right. And Brian?
Yes.
With discussion on the motion, if I could make a statement?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to abstain from voting because I feel that we have been failed by the district manager, not having been provided with the complete information that was requested at a board meeting a month ago. And the result is, in effect, that the roles have been reversed and the district manager has directed the board rather than the board directing the district manager. Thank you.
I could comment to that, Chair. I'm fine with entering in discussions with Diane to do new logos and variations on the logo. So while there may have been miscommunication or a read, I think we heard from 2 or 3 folks that they read it the way I did. That being said, I am entirely open to doing a new logo to correct for the miscommunication.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other comments on the motion?
No.
Then I'm going to call for a roll call vote. Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Abela,
Abstain for lack of complete information.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Gray,
Yes.
Vice Chair O'Brien,
Yes.
and Chair Dennert.
Yes. That brings us to a possible second motion on letterhead. Is there such a motion?
Brian, do you want me to show the 3 again, just for clarity?
Sure.
Probably
I
don't
think
need to show the blue one.
I say we're taking that one out. So there's option 1, option 2, and option 3.
We go back to 2.
Sure.
So this is option 2, trees separate, and then option 1,
Option 1 is trees.
trees together. All right, are there any motions?
I move to accept option 1.
This is actually 2.
I apologize. I was looking at the logo. I heard Kate with a motion, and I believe I saw Josh raise his hand. So Josh with a second to that motion. And then that would be a roll call vote. Unless there's, I'm sorry, is there any discussion?
Yes, Brian, I'll just reiterate, I'm going to abstain on this motion for the same reasons that I abstained on the previous motion.
Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Abela,
Abstain for lack of complete information.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Gray,
Yes.
Vice Chair O'Brien,
Yes.
and Chair Dennert.
Yes. Before we move on, I understand that we could not trace the history of those trees. And I also understand that they're generic trees at this point, but I'm always going to think of them as the trees at Sequoia Park, because the closest trees they look like to me is those Sequoia trees. If you get out there and look at them, maybe you'll see the same thing, but lost to the history of time is what trees those were intended to be.
For dinner, can I make a comment, please?
Yes.
On this item, if you notice the subject matter for this item, it was the logo, but it's also community outreach. And my question is, are we going to see a program on community outreach as part of this? Any new approach, or just to make sure we're all inclusive?
Dan, could you give me feedback on the meeting itself? So I know that we just made a motion on the staff recommendation, but could we discuss the other parts to the promotion?
Yeah, board, at your last meeting, we reviewed a plan and a guide and with you. So that was not direction from the board. It was to get input on those items. So at the previous meeting, we have an entire plan for outreach, improving outreach and communication, and we'll be following that.
But did we need to vote on that, or do we need to review it more thoroughly?
No, that's a staff document, so we're just looking for board input because it'll evolve. So as things change and evolve, we brought that to you for input from the board. But it was our plan, strategic plan, and guide to implement the logo you're seeing here. So at the last meeting, I think it was agendized that we were seeking just board comment and input on that, but not necessarily board approval of those documents.
Okay.
What we got direction on was to bring the logo back, which is what we did, and we didn't bring the other stuff back.
I guess my only concern is I was reading the magazine from Parks and Recreation Society. I might have the name wrong, but there's quite an article on park equity and being inclusive, and I just want to make sure this district is doing that.
Dan, if I may, in all of the outreach that we have collaborated with the district on, I don't know if any of you know this. I think Chair Dennert knows that I am a college board trustee, and diversity and inclusiveness is at the centerpiece of almost all elected officials and the things that we want to see in our public agencies. And so I look at almost all of the work that we do through that lens, both as Mustang Marketing and in collaboration with the district.
Diane, I would note as a district, and maybe the staff can comment, do we routinely use Spanish language communications? Danielle?
Oh, we currently do not translate our flyers into Spanish.
So if the Director Freeman, if we're talking about that type of outreach and potentially considered Spanish translation on this stuff, we could bring that back to the board to include and roll into our plan and documents.
I do see that our plan includes different demographics in our community, including by age. And I understand that language could be a barrier to some, but if we're giving input specifically, I would want to make sure that groups are included, including alternative rec. And I know that we do a good job at that. And we do that specifically though with people that are currently in our programs. And I would like to know details about our marketing plan as it evolves, how we market that. Like if someone's not already a part of a community and they wouldn't maybe know that exists. And then the other question that I'd have is for our Latino community, obviously some language is a barrier, but it might just be also where we advertise. So my input is not specifically to direct it to where we advertise, but just that, as Diane mentioned before, it is a priority of ours that we reach as many of our local people as possible to include them. Not seeing any other comments on this item. We're going to move forward to new business.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Moving forward to new business, item A, approval of the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District Board schedule for 2021 meetings, conferences, and workshops.
Thank you, Chair and Board. Before you is the proposed regular meeting calendar of the board. It also notes various other board involvement activities. I would note that a couple of notes. One is the meetings in Oak Park have been scheduled on this to occur just after we have our committee meetings that are scheduled in Oak Park. And then secondly, the note that's in the staff report is our regular Thursday meeting in September conflicts with Yom Kippur. So with that, the calendar is before you, and we can make any changes as the board would like.
I would not like a meeting to conflict with a local religious holiday, Yom Kippur. So I would suggest that we do not have that conflict. Dan, what are the possibilities, or how do we address that?
We can either cancel that meeting entirely or do it a different day that week, say Wednesday night.
Is there a preference of other board members to cancel or to set it for Wednesday?
Let's set it up for Wednesday because, I mean, we can always cancel later if it's cancelable, but I would say set it up for Wednesday right now, the 15th.
I would agree with that. I think we should keep as many meetings for the public on the calendar as possible, and we can always cancel if there's a reason to cancel.
Ed, do you have any comment on that?
No comment.
And Elaine? Elaine, any comment on moving it to Wednesday?
No.
Then Dan, I think we have direction to move it to Wednesday.
Yes.
And then
roll call vote on the calendar with that amendment if there's no further amendments or a motion.
Are there any other amendments or motions or discussion in meetings? And Dan, do I ask for public input on that?
Yes.
Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on the meeting schedule for 2021, including moving meetings or the times or anything to do with the meeting schedule? Not seeing any member of the public commenting or unmuting themselves. That means we can make a motion if somebody has a motion.
I will make a motion to accept this as discussed with the one amendment on that one meeting.
I see Kate O'Brien with a motion and Elaine Freeman with a second. And this is a roll call vote. Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Abela?
Aye.
Director Freeman?
Yes.
Director Gray?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Brien?
Yes.
And Chair Dennerts?
Yes, so that's a 5-0, a vote in favor of the approval of the meeting schedule with that amendment. That brings us to item B, approval of employee agreement authorizing the extension of reimbursement benefits from calendar year 2020 through 2021.
Honorable Chair and members of the board, as you recall, I'm sure, during the 2021 fiscal year negotiation period, staff met with each of the employee groups to discuss financial impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the district. As a result of the revenue loss this year, there were no benefit increases or cost of living adjustments. However, the board did agree to approve one rollover of unused dental, vision, and boot allowance for calendar year 2020. And that will be available for employees to use throughout 2021. They did have difficulty using some of their benefits. And staff is now asking for authorization for the district manager to sign the agreement that's attached to the staff report and to implement that benefit change.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Is there any member of the public that has a comment on that? Not seeing a member of the public with a comment, and Ed with the motion, and Kate, was that you with the second?
No,
It was Elaine with the second. Gina, will you call the roll for that?
Director Abela,
Aye.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Gray,
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Brien,
yes.
and Chair Denner.
Yes. So that's a unanimous approval.
Thank you.
We're going to move forward to item C, approval of permit agreements for use of recreational facilities by San Jose Baseball League, Simi Valley Baseball League, Simi Valley Girls Softball League, and Simi Youth Baseball.
Good evening, Chair Abela. This is Laura and board members. Right now, we have the renewal agreements that are coming up for the following leagues, as Denner has said. They'll be ending in the year of 2021, and we have to renew them. However, the option is to have these particular groups with no increase due to the financial impact that we've occurred during the fluidity of this pandemic. Currently, right now, in 2020, they were charged $1,400 per field, and we're proposing to keep this with no increase. Hopefully, the recommendation will be passed. If not, we do have alternates if that's necessary.
So we're going to take questions from board members, ask for public input, and then discuss it. Are there any questions from board members on this item?
I had one question about girls softball. Are they still not using Amanda McPherson, or does the softball complex up there? Is there some reason they're not using that, or are they using both?
They have the option of using the Apollo field as well as the one at the Simi Valley Girls Complex.
Right. Okay. That's my only question.
Laura had a question, and looking through the packet, I'm seeing Apollo for girls softball. But I'm not seeing as much information about Big Sky.
Yeah, Big Sky, they have a current agreement with us that was extended with no payment due until 2022. So the $1,400 payment will only be applied for the Apollo use fields.
And Apollo is a little bit different because we're running the permit for it, but it's on school district facilities. Is that correct?
Correct. We actually maintain those fields there.
If Apollo fields, if they're not allowed to use it because of anything to do with the schools, like school limitations?
Right now, no.
Or has that been discussed?
The school district's still letting us allow our use our lease fields from them as in compliance with park district regulations. So,
thank you. And then, has there been any discussion about if they sign this agreement and their seasons are canceled, partial payments, repayments, or credits, or anything of that nature?
That has not been discussed right now.
So Director Denner, part of the negotiation was they are still using the fields for practice and a lot of those activities. So in consideration of the fact they're still using the fields, the middle ground was, even though they're not using them for games, that we'd get this level of support without an increase, whether or not the games are canceled or not.
And then that means if there is an extended cancellation, we could come back to discuss any of those issues. Is that correct?
Correct. At any time, we can amend the agreement if that's a concern of the board, or if we hear that from the community, we can amend these as the board should want to do.
Laura and staff, I appreciate that we worked to get there to be not an increase in these times on these field sports teams, because I know some of the leagues are under a lot of pressure, not just short term, but if they don't make it through this, if they reopen much later. So I appreciate that we worked out that no increase. Are there any motions to approve? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any public comment? Any member of the public want to comment on the agreement for the sports fields? All right, not seeing any public comment. Board members discussion, or is there a?
I'll move to approve, Chair Denner.
I'll second.
I saw quickly, Zoom is different, but I saw Josh with his hand, and Kate, you're right after that. So Ed made the motion and Director Gray made the second. Gina, will you call a roll call vote?
Director Avila,
Aye.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Gray,
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Brien,
Yes.
Chair Denners.
Yes. So that's all in favor. That brings us to item D, authorization to solicit public bids for the May Boyer Park Playground Repair Project.
Chair Danner, members of the board, on September 3rd, 2020, the Board of Directors decided to rescind their decision to remove the two ash trees at May Boyer Park that's affecting the playground area. Basically, the roots are uplifting the rubberized playground surfacing. Moving forward, you elected to take an alternative option, which recommended saving the biggest or the large ash tree, removing the sickly smaller ash tree, and relocating the play apparatus and play surfacing to avoid the roots of the large tree. Plans and specifications for this project were designed in-house by one of our landscape designers. He did meet with Carolyn Cass-Barton at the site, and Carolyn had a few little revisions. Actually, it saved us quite a bit of money, one of her revisions or suggested revisions. The plans are now complete. At this time, staff is requesting board authorization to solicit bids for this project. As you can remember, you reallocated funds that were originally earmarked for the asphalt repair at Oak Canyon Community Park in the amount of $75,000 to this project so we can relocate the equipment and save the tree as is and protect the roots. And I'll answer any questions anybody may have.
Any board members have a question?
No.
I'd just like to thank
Yes.
Carolyn for her input. Way to save money is always good.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Is there any member of the public? By public, I pretty much mean Carolyn, but is there any member of the public that cares to comment on this item? Carolyn, go ahead.
I just want to thank you for your, I guess, rescinding the original plan and going forward with this plan. I'm very pleased, and I'm enjoying looking forward to being over there as it progresses. So anyway, at the park. So thank you very much for your input and taking care of it. I think the community is extremely happy with the decision that we made.
Is there any other member of the public that has a question or comment? Caroline, I want to thank you for your confidence in us that given enough information and discussion that we would be able to make progress together.
Thank you.
I would like to make the motion.
I'll move approval.
So I made the motion, Elaine, you seconded. Does that work?
Yeah.
Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Avila,
Aye.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Gray,
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Brien,
Yes.
and Chair Denner.
Yes. That means that we've all approved it. It was 5-0. That brings us to written communications of note.
Staff has
Josh
no.
Gray? I apologize. Dan, did you have any?
No, I do not.
Josh?
I apologize. Can Can you repeat the question?
Oh, any written communications of note? Like, did anybody of the public contact you that you wanted to share with us?
Sure, I can share. I had a member of the community reach out about their experience at the skate park and a concern that how they may have been treated by staff and some of the rangers. I want to immediately follow that up with saying staff was immediately responsive. They were fantastic about it, clarifying. I reached out back to the community member. They were pleased with the end result. I want to commend our rangers and our staff for doing everything they can. And where there was a small blip and a miscommunication, the community member was left happy. Do you need any further details, or does that work for?
Thank you, Kate O'Brien. Was there any written communications of note?
Nope, not a one.
Elaine?
We're just on written communication? Or
Correct.
comment?
Not board reports yet.
Okay. No written.
Ed?
None.
There was one member of the Oak Park community that had sent me a list of suggestions for including Hanukkah among the holidays that we celebrate. We did a really cool program. I very much like it, where children can write letters to Santa and the Park District organizes that. So they had suggestions on how we could include Hanukkah, and I'll share them for an upcoming Oak Park Advisory Committee meeting. That brings us to reports by board members. Director Gray?
Yes, I participated in the CARPD board roundtable. It was the first attempt at Zoom, and actually I think it was a little awkward getting started, but I think what it shows is how diverse park districts are statewide. I mean, we have some very large ones that are not burdened quite by everything, and then we have some small districts that are definitely struggling. And so I think it was worthwhile, and I'm sure we'll have more of those. Also, I was with Director O'Brien at the Historical Society Committee meeting, and I think you probably will have the minutes from those. But we had actually a very long agenda. We talked about the Adobe roof and getting that repaired, an update on the trees at Strathern, strategic reopening plan, responsibility for the windmill maintenance, and the success of the Dia de los Muertos event was very well attended. And window glazing at the barber shop. What I missed this year is the annual meeting, because they always have such good food. Cement repairs at the metal shed, update on facility rentals. And I hope that maybe, Dan, we could just include that sometime on how much money has been lost this year because of rentals. It's really very, very sad. And then there were a couple other personnel items. I would like to adjourn this evening's meeting in the name of Peggy Sadler. Peggy was a member of the community for over 50 years, was very active, a mover and shaker for the Cultural Arts Center, Police Foundation, Republican Women, everything you can imagine she was participated in, and unfortunately she passed last week, but I do want to adjourn in her memory. Thank you.
We will do that. Josh Gray, any reports by board members?
Yeah, sure. I enjoyed joining Elaine on the CARPT meeting. I appreciated that Elaine kind of talked up our district and the PAL program. It was very informative getting to hear the pros and cons other districts in the state are facing, and it was an interesting experience. I also want to say I was able to walk the Chumash Trail this past weekend, and I noticed I haven't hiked it in a few months, I believe, and noticed that the signage was massively improved on the distances that previously had been quite worn down by weathering and kind of a multiple signage that would repeat in an uninformative manner. I just want to say the Chumash Trail looks fantastic now. I appreciated the signage. That's one of my favorite spots to hike, as the picture behind me shows. But I want to commend staff on that. It looks fantastic. And I was also, I dropped off some paperwork at the office last night, I believe, and had very short, safe interactions with staff. But I want to commend them on how they're following the stay-at-home order and the seriousness the staff was taking COVID and the effort to protect themselves and others in that. Thank you.
Ed, do you have a board report?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Dennert. First of all, you're doing an outstanding job with your first full meeting here. I just want to tell you that. Even with some board directors who are a pain in the butt sometimes. But anyway, I want to start off, actually, I do want to talk about Peggy Sadler, and I echo Elaine's request to adjourn in her honor. Peggy is just an outstanding person, so involved in the community, a pillar of the community, and so always so supportive of me and my advancement in the community, and just a wonderful person. So she will truly be missed. I didn't have any meetings. I did, as I've been doing regularly since I've been on the board, but particularly this year with everything that's happened, a number of park visits and inspections. One place that's a natural one for me is Rancho Santa Susana. And I do want to say, Wayne, while we know it's not ideal and not 100% solved, the work that your crew has done at Rancho Santa Susana Park on the walking path has definitely improved the situation greatly there. And I don't know if it's a long-term solution, but certainly in the short term, just excellent work. And it's certainly a lot more friendly to use it now, a lot easier to use it, easy on the shoes, so thank you for that. And then I'll also say, because I spend a lot of time there, I used to visit the actual community center and our employees there more often than I do now. But out of respect for not trying to do too many visits during the current health crisis, I don't go in there as often. But I did visit with Kelly yesterday. Brought her a special request of cookies, and fun chatting with her, and got a chance to meet with Laura as well. And I just want to say, I know from the past, and it was no different this time, it's such a well-run community center. Laura and her staff just do such a great job there. They deal well with the public, they're friendly, and just proud of that community center and our staff there and the work that they do. So having had a chance to finally do a longer visit than I've been able to do there in a long time, I had to pass that along. Not only have it's I've always thought it was a great situation there, and it's better than ever. So again, props to Laura and Kelly and the rest of the staff there. Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome. I didn't skip anybody with board reports, did I?
Not yet, no.
Kate, you did go, correct?
No, I did not. But
Kate, yes. Kate, it's your turn.
I just had the one meeting, the Historical Society meeting with Director Freeman. And it was a long agenda. We're not usually that long, but it was. And I'd like to say Peggy Sadler was one of the first people I met down here when I moved to Simi Valley. And I knew like 3 or 4 people that lived here. And then I met her through the Cultural Arts Center. She was on the board there, and she was welcoming and kind and very involved in the community. A good model for how to be in the world. So we will miss her definitely. And that's all I had.
Elaine, before I begin my board report, I do remember you sharing that you met Peggy Sadler pushing a stroller with your son in it. Am I correct about that? Elaine, is that where you met Peggy? You were pushing a stroller with your son in it?
Yes, I did.
Remember, where were
A stroller.
Lane, where were you pushing that stroller?
Along Sycamore.
I just had a feeling it might be a park. Obviously, we're going to adjourn the meeting tonight after our closed session in memory of Peggy Sadler because she was civic-minded and she meant so much to so many people in our community. So my board report for tonight, Paul Freeborn had put together a toy drive in the lobby of the building. I know the building's closed to the public, but if somebody wants to drop something by, I'm pretty sure staff will get that in there. And I appreciate that he does things like that. Add a few boxes of crayons because as a kid and as an adult, opening a new pack of crayons is always a little bit of joy in that. So I encourage people to join in Paul in doing that toy drive. I appreciate that the staff did decorations and didn't give up, even in these times that there still needs to be some holiday cheer. And they came up with some games for staff, and I know that my board members were very generous with coming up with prizes too. So I appreciate staff doing that. When we look at the list of holidays as a park district that we celebrate or that our community does, I just want to kind of point out the commonality that they have. Whether it's Christmas or Diwali, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or the winter solstice, it's light over dark. Like we're celebrating, it's a time of the year, but there's light that we could find in this time of the year. So all those holidays have one element to them that unite us together. So I appreciate we're able to include so much. I asked for an upcoming meeting for staff to put together with the Trailblazers to implement my idea of asking for volunteers to when they're allowed to gather and they're comfortable with that. We could do a short talk and we could rotate through people from our community to talk and then mostly focus on a hike. So I'll follow up staff later, but Tracy let me know that they're going to work on that. The Mandalorian was filmed at Rocky Peak. As a person that's grown up with Star Wars, when I found that out, I instantly thought, like, how did I not, as a board member, get to be a part of that? Ed, I understand your feeling now with finding out about a recent filming project in Simi Valley. When it happened and it was you, I was like, that's just how the filming process goes. I have a much, much stronger feeling about that now that I found out I was MRCA. So the next meeting, I might bring up that I'm a huge fan of Star Wars. That brings us to our MLK Day event. I'm looking forward to that, but for staff, I know that we might have to change it up. I want to do it no matter what, but I understand that we might have to adjust it. So whether there's no gathering or we come up with a list of ways the public can volunteer but not gather, I understand that there might need to be adjustments to that. I've been noticing more people riding one-wheelers in our parks, which looks almost like a skateboard, but there's only one wheel. And the reason I brought it up is I want to be proactive. And as Ed mentioned before, we want to be fun. So I wanted to find out, do they follow the current rules and do we have to change the rules? And Dan, the reason I bring it up in my board report is my understanding is we don't have to change the rules because state law allows them. But if they're not currently allowed, I would like to look at that at a future meeting. So I think they're totally allowed. I looked it up. There was an assembly bill and they designed them to go below the speed limit so that they'd be allowed to be used on trails. At first I thought it wasn't much exercise, but I talked to an enthusiast and he said, no, actually balancing on that board for hours is a lot of exercise. So that's one more fun thing for the members of the public to do. I'm happy. And then lastly, as a part of our Martin Luther King Day event, staff worked with me on this, but a group of students wants to design some signs for Rancho Duck Pond. Nature interpretation, like people know the geese and ducks there, but also the history of the park. So I suggested that they come up with a digital version that we could keep on file for when these kids go away to college. If the signs need to be replaced, we could print another copy, but they're also going to decorate it. So they're not able to gather to do their service projects, but they could design all this at home and then one day go and hang up their signs in the different kiosks that are already there. So I appreciate Nikki's teaching me the process. She went around and found the approvals that we could put the signs in, and the team of students is designing those signs. That's it for my board report. That brings us to report by district manager.
Thank you, Chair and Board. First item, we have our annual Oak Park election. This year we have 3 seats that are open for new elected folks from Oak Park. We'll be posting that on December 14th. The nominations for the positions are open from December 14th to January 2nd. January 22nd. So people, if you know folks that you want to nominate or talk into potentially being on the Oak Park Committee, the nomination period's the 14th to the 22nd. We will be advertising that in the Acorn. We will, those candidates that are nominated will be making a presentation via Zoom at the January 28th MAC meeting. And then we will be accepting ballots the next day, Friday, from 7 in the morning till 7 in the evening. Normally we do that election in person at the MAC meeting, but because of that, I'm having folks just fill out a ballot and come down and drop it in the box. The recreation director recruitment will be posted no later than Monday. We expect that will be open for folks to apply through January 29th. We are working with a group of folks with the special districts in discussion with the county about getting some financial assistance with COVID related expenses, much like the cities have received. We did close our November financials, and everything is still in line with budget projections in spite of COVID. I did have a discussion with the Rotary Club. Informally, they would like to continue to do some form of events moving into next year and through June. Don't know if it's going to be more drive-ins or other types of things, but they're interested in partnering with us on offering that to the community. We did close on the Murphy property. I think I updated the board on that, but we're expected to receive $640,000 next week. If the board will recall that for those funds do go to the city because of some conflicts in Patricia Murphy's will. And there's a process set up so that we work with the city on that. We are working on our agreement with the Rancho Simi Foundation for the use of the Santa Susana Depot. We're working on that. That'll come before the board in January. Our golf course project relative to the shack, I guess we call it, or the area that we're improving, the scope of that and the cost of that has grown. So I anticipate we'll have to come back to the board and go out to bid on that because it's at a higher dollar amount now, and obviously review that with the board and get the board's thoughts on that and hopefully blessing. Upcoming January 7th, we're going to have our board committee assignments. We're hopeful to bring back a discussion on allowing bees in some of our areas and maybe the unincorporated area of the county. That was a request of a director. And then also we're still trying to schedule the Boy Scout recognitions that Director Dennert had requested, and also the full board. We don't have any committee meetings scheduled other than our normal Historical Society meeting. That concludes my report.
Dan, who brought the bees to your attention?
Elaine.
I did.
Yeah.
Elaine, I'm very interested in that issue, but you said that's in our January meeting?
I'm thinking I'll ask Wayne. I think he was planning at one of the January meetings to bring that to the board for discussion.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that is correct. It's calendar for your January 7th meeting.
Are there any other questions on the district manager's report? Not seeing any questions on that. Dan, is it our policy that the public can ask you questions on the district manager report?
By protocol, it should go through the board members.
Okay.
Your direct connection to the public, and then you guys would direct me to respond if you'd like me to.
Appreciate that. So that brings us to closed session.
So with that, we'll have to have the folks on that are part of the closed session discussion. We'll give the folks a minute to jump off who are not part of that.
All right, we are out of closed session with no reportable action. That brings us to it.
1 second, Chair. Sorry. Lee, is that everybody that needs to be back in the meeting?
We have Gina.
Gina? There's Gina. All right, there we go.
Okay.
So I'm going to move to adjournment tonight in the memory of Peggy Sadler. a person from St. Valley that many people have fond memories of her for her civic involvement. We are adjourned.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays.
Brian, what happened in closed session?
There was no reportable action.
Okay, thank you.